I'm Stephanie Rule, MSNBC anchor and host of the podcast Modern Rules from NBC Think and iHeartRadio. The new season of my podcast is back with more probing conversations that get at the heart of the issues that are keeping us up at night. From sex and dating during COVID to the stark reality that the gender gap is a lot wider than we thought, and the true ramifications of misinformation.
These ideas that coronavirus is really just about government control, that it's infringing on civil liberties, all of these ideas are similar ideas to the anti-vaccine movement.
So where do we go from here? Join me, Stephanie Rule, for the second season of Modern Rules. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
It's a Monday. Moving into December. Here we go. Football really counts now. Live in Los Angeles, this is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and right here on FS1, 1 hour from now, where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. Plenty of both. Great Monday Night Football game tonight. Seahawks, a real Super Bowl contender, I believe, if they can get their pass rush right. Joy Taylor is joining me. Joy, how are you?
I am great. That was a interesting set of games yesterday.
It was, and it was an interesting, going back to last Thursday, it's a very interesting place we are in the NFL. So it's funny, when I was a kid, I used to get like a pocket schedule of my favorite college or pro football teams, and I would do like WL. And I always try to be realistic. I never want to be a fan like, we got 14-0, the Seahawks will never lose a game, when I was a kid. And I always try to be realistic. So when I predicted the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would go 10-6 and as a wild card team, I don't remember every game I picked, but right now, here's the W's and L's from week 1. L, W, 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 L, W, 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 L, W, L, L. 4 left should all be W, 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 W's. 3 of the teams they play, Atlanta, twice, Detroit, are bad. So your pocket schedule, this is exactly what you did and I did. Right? We picked them to be 10-6. Most of you picked them to be 9-7 or 10-6. There were a few doubters and a few they're going to win the Super Bowl. That's what we all did. And then this morning everybody's like, whoa, what is going on? I don't know, they lost close to Patrick Mahomes. This is all very predictable. They're a work in progress. They're very talented. And because there was no preseason, they're thrown together. This is where they are. They're 7-5. It looks like they're going to win 3 of their next 4 or 4 games to go 11-5 or 10-6. That is exactly the high end that 90% of us had. My question with this, Joy is my witness, was never about Tom Brady's age, and it was never about his arm. I never questioned it. I lived in Tampa, and I lived next to Boston. I said, you're talking about Tom Brady, rigid, efficient, willful, aspirational, driven, moving to loosey-goosey Tampa cocktails at 4 with Bruce Arians, no biscuit if you don't risk it. That, stylistically, was my concern. And this morning it still is. It's not about Tampa's talent. It's not about Brady. Did you notice Tony Romo yesterday? I love Tony. How he was defending Tom Brady for 3.5 hours. Anybody notice that? Why would that be? Because star quarterbacks protect star quarterbacks. And Bruce Arians came out with a flamethrower and ripped Brady last week. And so Tom Brady called up his buddy Tony Romo and said, here's the story. And so if you listen for 3.5 hours, it was Tony Romo defending Tom Brady. That's all it was. And that's the game they're playing now. The concern with me, and it's always been a concern, is that when people are successful, they're even harder to change. It's hard to get anybody to change once they get to be 40, 50 years old. But if you're the most successful player in the history of America's most popular sport, Tom Brady, the idea that you're going to go loosey-goosey and throw the ball over the top all the time and be comfortable, you're not. That's why I think there's a strong possibility Bruce Arians is not around next year, and he retires with a big check. I don't think Arians and Brady, they're so different football-wise. They're so different personality-wise. They're so different lifestyle-wise. They're both winners. But I don't think that's the fit. I never did. Now, I said they're going to be good enough to win a bunch of games because they got a bunch of talent. I like the GM. I like Arians. I love Brady. But there's nothing really surprising about any of this. As I said a couple weeks ago, I led the show. I said when you're a parent, the days are long and the years fly by. In the NFL, Sundays are crazy, but the year is so predictable. Tampa's going to end up exactly where you predicted. Y'all predicted 9-7 and 10-6. You didn't have them winning the division. Yet the Saints have been 13-3, 13-3 last 2 years and brought everybody back. You didn't have the Buccaneers winning the division. Nobody did, except crazy people. But this season has been so predictable for Tampa. The only thing I worried about, I think, is the problem. Not because I'm smart, because it's obvious. I lived in Tampa. I lived near Boston. I followed Brady. I followed Arians. Their personalities are different. You're seeing a clash here. I don't think it lasts 2-3 years. I think at the end of this year they'll make decisions. I think Tampa goes to the playoffs, wins a playoff game, maybe 2. But none of this is surprising. We all grabbed our little pocket schedules and did the WL game. We all did it. And right now it's LWWWL, WWWL, WLL, and we'll finish WWWW. That's what it's going to finish. Sundays are crazy. It's all very predictable. Here's Tom Brady after.
No, it's just external noise that when you're losing, that's what you deal with. So, I love playing for the guys that I play with, the coaches, the whole organization's been unbelievable. And I think just got to go out and I certainly have to do a better job of the last 4 weeks of the year. So, appreciate it. Just have a good week.
All right, Monday Night Football tonight, Seattle and Philadelphia, and here's why it's big. Because what we have in the NFL right now, it's pretty clear, and I don't think any of us would argue. We have 3 really good teams. The Chiefs, the Steelers, and the Saints are really good. They're not perfect. Sometimes the Chiefs don't play with a ton of urgency. Steelers don't run the ball consistently. And the Saints, frankly, don't throw the ball over the top. But in a salary cap era, they're about as good as you're going to get. They're really good teams. And the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Saints also have something else in common. They have excellent general managers. Draft well, develop well, and all 3 coaches, Tomlin, Sean Payton, and Andy Reid, have Super Bowls. And we know Breeze, Big Ben, and Mahomes are good enough to win a Super Bowl. Those are the 3 best teams in the league. Now, the 4th best team changes every week. Yesterday, it was Tennessee. 2 weeks ago, it was the Rams. 3 weeks ago, the Colts rolled Tennessee. It was the Colts. Some weekends, last night, could it be Green Bay? Tampa Bay against the Packers looked like the 4th best team. And the Raiders on one Sunday at Arrowhead Stadium, they look like the 4th best team. So we know the 3 best. Put them in any order. I would go Kansas City, Pittsburgh, New Orleans. But the most interesting 4th place team, the team that has the highest ceiling, plays tonight, Seattle. And this is very interesting. So Seattle has all the ingredients of a Super Bowl winning team. Head coach going to the Hall of Fame. Quarterback's a superstar. Playmakers all over the place. They can be physical or finesse. Chris Carson back tonight. Watch them get physical. They play from behind well. We know that with Russell. And they play with the lead well. They're good on the road. Excellent on the road. 10-1 their last 11 East Coast road games. And oh, by the way, they're in every game. They never get blown out. They lost to Buffalo by 10 this year, and that was a shocker. They're in every game. All the Super Bowl ingredients, except one thing. You got no pass rush, you got no defense. Here's what's very interesting. So Jamal Adams was hurt. He came back. He's back now. And Carlos Dunlap, Seahawks gave up a late draft pick to get Carlos Dunlap. Since they've played together, Seattle has 13 sacks. Tied for the NFL lead, I believe. And they have a young player named L.J. Collier. They drafted him a year ago from TCU, did nothing, a little hurt his first year. Played great against Arizona. So if you watch that game tonight and you see a consistent pass rush from Seattle, then they're the fourth best team in the league. So tonight, because what I look for in Super Bowl teams is ingredients. The Steelers have it, the Chiefs have it, and the Saints have it. And everybody else, every week, Tennessee looks like it, then it's the Rams, then it's the Bucs, then it's the Packers. Watch Seattle tonight. If they get a pass rush, they're my four. And they've got the players and the components, Dunlap, Jamal Adams, and L.J. Collier. So I think that's kind of where we stand on a Monday morning as we head out of Thanksgiving. Fourth team, looking for the ingredients. Seattle has all of them except the consistent pass rush. Will they do it in back-to-back weeks? Because they did it last week against Arizona. If they do it again tonight, you got yourself a potential Super Bowl team in the Pacific Northwest. Coming up next, the one thing, and I know Kansas City's great, but the one thing that would worry me, and there's nothing Kansas City can do about it. They can't correct it, they can't solve it, they can't fix it, and it's going to be here for the next several years with this Kansas City Chiefs team. That's coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
I'm Stephanie Rule, MSNBC anchor and host of the podcast Modern Rules from NBC Think and iHeartRadio. The new season of my podcast is back with more probing conversations that get at the heart of the issues that are keeping us up at night. From sex and dating during COVID to the stark reality that the gender gap is a lot wider than we thought, and the true ramifications of misinformation.
These ideas that coronavirus is really just about government control, that it's infringing on civil liberties, all of these ideas are similar ideas to the anti-vaccine movement.
So where do we go from here? Join me, Stephanie Rule, for the second season of Modern Rules. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you own or rent a home? Sure you do. Fortunately, Geico makes it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. Get a quote today at geico.com. Good to have you in with Joy Taylor. So I've always had this sort of belief that if money's too easy, you get in trouble in life. You should have to work for it. Hollywood money is all cheekbones and clear skin. It's too easy. That's why there's so many messed up Hollywood families. There's a lot of fortunes in retail. Retail's hard. In waste management, in insurance, annuities. There's a lot of fortunes been made in those. That's hard money. That's hard money. Dealing with the public. Waste management, you know what you're dealing with. Hollywood money's too easy. It's glamorous, too easy, too quick. If you hit it big. It's just too easy. Making $500,000 to put something on Instagram? You gotta be kidding me. So I got so many messed up families. And I watch Kansas City. And they're starting to remind me of the Kevin Durant, Steph, Clay Warriors the first year. It's too easy. And psychologically, when it's that easy, it's hard to play with a ton of urgency. Think about this. If I told you Patrick Mahomes had 462 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, Tyreek Hill had 270 yards, Patrick Mahomes had 124 passer rating, you'd be like, oh my God, who they beat 46-13? No, actually, they won 27-24, and if not for completing a third down pass, 43-year-old Tom Brady at home got the ball left with a minute. They were great on third down. They had 20%, 25% more first downs. They dominated time of possessions. Mahomes was perfect. Tyreek Hill was unguardable. And they won 27-24. And needed a third down completion to seal it. In New England, that was waste management. That was annuities. It was never easy. I mean, the Randy Moss years for a couple years in the regular season looked easy, but it wasn't easy in the postseason. I mean, Tom Brady went to 9 Super Bowls in New England. 8 of them were one-possession games. And the 9th one, the Rams, he was awful. Tom Brady never scored a touchdown in the first quarter of any Super Bowl he's been in. Think about that. It's always been hard. New England won with efficiency and detail. It was never easy money. And I think that's why it was always, every New England game, you rarely saw them. I mean, Joy and I watched the last 15 years of that. They were never inconsistent. You got the same team every week. Kansas City, you don't get the same team every half. It's not a knock on it, but they scored 10 points in the final 3 quarters. When you're so brilliant, when you're so beautiful, when it's so easy, when you're so talented, and it's effortless, it gets to your head. It's hard. You know, the Chicago Bulls were really consistent. I mean, they'd have the occasional bad game against an expansion team, but, you know, as great as the Chicago Bulls were, they weren't pretty. They were tough. Scottie Pippen never shot a great jumper. Michael scored a lot of his points at the rim getting tackled. Dennis Rodman, old guys with knee braces like Steve Kerr. I mean, they had these Will Perdue's, and if you go look, Ron Harper's, if you go look at the DNA of the Chicago Bulls, the greatness of their dynasty was, it was never easy. Kobe, Shaq, that was easy. There were some easy times. Magic, Kareem, sometimes it was easy, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy with New England's dynasty. It wasn't. To the very end, they were trailing Seattle. They were trailing Atlanta. They struggled against the Rams. They all looked like the Eagles Super Bowl or the Giants Super Bowl. They all looked like that. And so as I watch them, I think to myself, boy, Andy Reid's going to have to put his foot down with this team a lot. They're young. They're talented. It's easy money. The wins come easy. The points come fast. And you go back to that Kevin Durant, Steph, Clay Warriors. The first year flew through it like Kansas City last year. Kansas City, week 12, defense is healthy, flies through the league. Second year, the Warriors, KD, Steph, forced to 7 in the Western Conference Final. The year after that, they went to 6 games in the first round and 6 games in the second round against clearly inferior teams. Some of this stuff, when you win early and it's easy and it's effortless and you're brilliant, it's not the hitting, it's the head. You got to battle yourself. I don't remember seeing a team. I mean, Kansas City. That's why I compare them to the Warriors. I don't remember any NFL team that scores this fast, this quick, this easy. It looks like a 7-on-7 drill. And Tampa's got a defense. It looks like high school 7-on-7 stuff. It's just kind of strolling back there, and Mahomes just keeps backpedaling and backpedaling and backpedaling. He plays like nobody else does. He just keeps back. 7-step drop. He's like 13 steps back. Then kind of arms it up the field. Oh, nobody can guard Tyreek Hill. Another touchdown, 270 yards. Fastest guy in the league. Best tight end in the league. Best quarterback arm in the league. Running backs can play. Offensive line can block. Coach is brilliant. Joy with the news.
Herd on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
I can see Nick right now watching that rant.
Oh, I was on the phone with him. And the minute Mike Evans caught that from Brady, Nick's like, I gotta go. That's exactly what he hung up on me. He goes, and his TV, because he's on the East Coast in New York, his TV is 6 seconds ahead of me. So Brady walking up to the line, Nick goes, on! Aaron! I'm like, what? Oh, I gotta go.
It's hard to watch games with anyone who is like a little bit ahead or behind you.
Yes.
It's like, let's just text. So the Packers made it look easy last night. It's pretty much unwatchable by the third quarter.
Chicago games are really increasing. I know it's a big market. Their games are tough to watch.
Well, they win ugly, and they lose ugly. They lose ugly too. 41-25. Packers beat the Bears last night. Aaron Rodgers threw for 211 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also became the 11th player to reach 50,000 career passing yards and hit that mark with the second fewest attempts in NFL history, so still brilliant. Green Bay's defense also had a big game, forcing 3 turnovers from Trubisky, who is making his first start since week 3 and suffered his first loss of the season.
Nicest bad quarterback ever. He's such a wonderful kid. You can tell the players like him. When I watch him,
I think everybody likes him. Even Tony Dungy could
yeah.
not bring himself
You can't
to be critical of him.
I mean, I just think Mitch Trubisky's one of those guys that you would love as a friend. He would drive you to the airport, even if he was sick and down in the dumps. But I didn't get it when he came out. I don't get it now, and it just they got to reboot the quarterback situation in Chicago, or else it's gonna be this against Green Bay for the next 3 years.
We definitely need more nice people in the world.
Yes,
There's nothing wrong with being nice, but
I'll take a little less nice at quarterback.
yeah, I mean, you could just be 10% less nice, and we'll deal with it for an upgrade in that position. I just feel bad for Chicago fans. And I've felt like this for the past couple of years with Chicago, which is why I think it's so strange that they're consistently in this predicament at the quarterback position. Not that it's easy to find a quarterback, but I mean, we all know who they passed up on.
Well,
so my thing is, like, you have a defense.
that is capable,
You
right?
know what they did? The Jay Cutler had a great arm, but was incredibly difficult.
Right.
And then they go interview Mitch Trubisky, and they don't like the arm, but he's such a nice guy.
You overcorrect.
So they overcorrected. So the word on what Chicago did is that Cutler was so poisonous in the locker room and so difficult. They didn't like the guy, but they loved his talent. And then they went and interviewed Trubisky, and they didn't love his talent, but they loved the guy. And they thought, you know what? He's everything Jay's not. Everybody will love him. He's athletic. His arm isn't great. The throwing motion, the mechanics are awful. But they overcorrected. It's like we've all done this before. You know, you date somebody, and they're super nice, but you can walk all over them. So then you want to date somebody that you can't walk over, and after about a year, you're like, I miss walking over somebody because now this person's driving me nuts. Trubisky's the opposite of Cutler, and the truth is, the answer is somewhere in the middle.
As with most things in life.
That's right.
And look, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's easy to find the perfect franchise quarterback. It's not, obviously. Every team goes through patches of this, and that's understandable. My thing is, you can't fool the locker room, right? Like, it's fine to be a great person, and that's actually a nice thing to do. But at the end of the day, players want to win. So if Jay Cutler was a horrible person and was winning, everyone would overlook it. The problem is that generally doesn't happen. Like, you don't have a lot of stories of great leaders who are half the locker room hates. That's not how it works. So again, like we always talk about, just find some balance in life. Right. And don't disregard the actual tangibles of a real good player. So the Patriots keep their playoff hopes alive, miraculously, with a big win over the Cardinals. Cam Newton struggled all day, but 2 rushing touchdowns from James White and a game-winning field goal from Nick Folk were enough to win 2017. Patriots defense was solid, limiting Arizona's offense to just 298 yards, and it was their second lowest of the season, and Kyler Murray did not have a passing touchdown for the first time this year.
Well, again, let's be fair now. So what is Belichick known for? What is Belichick the best in the NFL at?
Defense.
Well, not only that, he is Einstein against young quarterbacks. Well, Josh Allen's been terrible. Darnold's been horrible. So Kyler Murray's like, okay, he doesn't get to see him in a division. He's never seen Belichick's defense. And Belichick, all these young quarterbacks, you know, this is one of these...
Yeah, his record against young quarterbacks is staggering.
It's like 31-3. And so Kyler never seen Belichick. He has no idea what he's going to get defensively. And Cliff Kingsbury's a college coach, just became an NFL coach. So when I watch that game, I'm like, oh! It's one of those you should have betted after the fact. I'm like, oh, of course Kyler Murray's struggling. Because Josh Allen struggles, and Kyler struggles. All Baker struggled against him. All young quarterbacks struggle.
So just experience.
Yep.
Cardinals are now 6-5. So if you look at the AFC playoff picture, though, we're talking about the Patriots still being in the mix. They're at 5-6, Raiders 6-5, and the Ravens are 6-4. So they are still technically in the hunt in the playoffs. They have the Chargers, Rams, Dolphins, Bills, and Jets left. So
how is New England in the hunt? This is an unbelievable coaching job. It really is. They have no playmakers.
It is, and you consider Cam Newton being out for COVID as well, and the struggles that they had when he came back. But the rest of their season is really interesting, though. At the Chargers, at the Rams are the most inconsistent good team in the league. The Dolphins, Bills, and Jets.
Oh, by the way, so Belichick faces another young quarterback next week, Justin Herbert. What's the line on that game? Take the Patriots against Justin Herbert. This is the classic. Herbert's never faced Belichick.
Then they have at the Rams, then they're at the Dolphins, which is another young quarterback.
They'll lose those two.
Still another young quarterback in Tua. They usually don't play well in that late game in December in Miami. They usually struggle, even with, like, that was notorious. Tom Brady's not there now, but still. Finally, some news that I thought you were the first person that I thought of when I saw this news. The Lions have fired head coach Matt Patricia and GM Bob Quinn.
Yeah.
The move comes after the Lions fell to 4-7 after a 41-25 blowout loss to the Texans on Thanksgiving for the whole world to watch. Patricia was in his 3rd season as Detroit's head coach and at a 13-29-1 record with the team. The Lions finished last in the NFC North in 2018 and 2019, and the seasons under him, and Bob Quinn had been the team's GM since 2016.
So as of yesterday, now the Jags fired their GM this morning, but as of yesterday, 4 of the 5 people fired in the NFL, coach or GM, were tied to Belichick. Proximity to brilliance does not equal... You could stand next to Einstein your entire life. It doesn't make you smart. All these New England people that come out...
It's really... I have a theory on this, though.
You do too?
Because we talk a lot about how successful or how much more successful the Andy Reid coaching tree has been from Belichick, and I think it's because while Belichick is a genius, we all know his personality at this point.
Yeah.
Andy Reid is the opposite personality of Bill Belichick.
So is Mike Holmgren.
Great football mind, respected football mind, but he's always described as a teacher.
Yes.
He's not described as a genius, even though he has a brilliant football mind. He's a teacher. And I think that is what leads to a more successful tree. Like, you're giving more of your thoughts and you're collaborating more. And there's nothing wrong with either way. Obviously, Belichick is the most successful, maybe the greatest coach of all time. But I mean, that's why I think when you see the people that leave him, they don't have the same success.
Steve Jobs at Apple leaves Apple, Apple tanks. Now you'd think, oh, these guys worked around Steve Jobs. They got his brilliance. Why did Apple go down? You can't share genius. I mean, Steve Jobs left now he builds it back up. They give it to Tim Cook, and by the way, he's great. Don't get me wrong, but it'll never be Apple. Like, and that's my thing with Belichick. He's the smartest football coach ever, but his tree's not very good. This is why I think Brian Flores has been such an admirable. By the way, Joe Judge and Brian Flores. A year in, you're like, okay, this may work. Does not go crazy, but it may work. Joe, over the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Let's go to Michael Vick, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing, 13 seasons for a Pro Bowler, most career rushing yards by a quarterback in league history. So I was saying this earlier, is that Tom Brady is so driven and detailed and intense. And it's not the football stuff, but Arian's kind of loosey-goosey, cocktails at 6, that's his style. And I do wonder, Michael, if their personalities are a perfect fit. So I want to ask you, go back to your career. Was there a coach where your personalities, maybe just, you were different people, and then was there a coach where it really clicked, that you had the same kind of goals and lifestyle? Because I think Brady and Arians, I think they're totally different human beings, football lifestyle. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when I played for Jim Moore Jr., our personalities was just totally different. Jim was a defensive coach and it focused more on the defensive side of the ball, and he was an outgoing personality, and he fired up the troops on the defensive side of the ball. On the offense, it was just up to us, Greg Knapp, to put it together. When I got to Philadelphia, it was Andy Reid. Andy Reid was an offensive mind. He was, it was something about him that attracted me to him every day, even if it was just for me to go into his office and just talk football on the random. So, just his aura alone and, his offensive mind just made me gravitate to him more and more. And there's some truth to that, man. But, with this situation, you got two guys who, share offensive mind, great at what they do, and can't find a way to make it work, which is kind of awkward right now.
So, listen, it should have been more. It was 27-24. If you wake up this morning and you're Brady, do you look at it and think we're in trouble? Or do you look at it and think, hey, listen, we just lost to the best team in the league 27-24, and we moved the ball on Kansas City the last half of the game. What's Brady thinking this morning?
I mean, it was second half heroics, but when you wake up this morning, the only thing I would be thinking about if I'm Tom Brady is the two games that we have to play against Atlanta, divisional opponent. They're playing some good football right now, and they're playing aggressive, and they're playing with a lot of confidence, and it's not going to be an easy task beating that team. So, they still have some games in front of them that they have to go out and earn. They're going to have to go out and win, and they're going to have to find a way to put it all together in a short period of time.
We were talking about Kansas City, Michael, that they remind me a little bit when Kevin Durant played with Steph and Clay. They scored so quickly and so easily that it's sometimes like you're just like, man, this is easy, and it's hard to play with urgency when stuff comes easy. And I watch Kansas City sometimes and I think, this is a little Warriors. Like, there are times.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why those guys play so hard is because Andy Reid is on the sideline. If you don't get it right, if you don't do what he's asking you to do within the framework of his offense, then you won't be out there playing. And there's a lot of guys to get credit for this. I mean, obviously the entire offense started with Patrick, Eric Bieniemy, and it's a guy that in that organization, quarterback coach Mike Kafka, who's a quarterback mind as well. We was together in Philadelphia, and another guy who's going to come up under that Andy Reid tree, just like Joy just mentioned. The tree is amazing. So when you out there, you got to be on the same. Everybody got to be on the same page. It can't be one person not knowing where he's going or not doing his job. It's very detailed in Kansas City. I'm telling you, I just know.
So tonight, I think it's one of the more interesting Monday Night Football games. Seattle is at Philadelphia, and I said this, is that when I watch Seattle, they've got all the ingredients of a Super Bowl team. They can play pretty, they can play physical. They're good on the road. I got Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson. They got playmakers. What's interesting is early in the year they had no pass rush, but then they get Carlos Dunlap and Jamal Adams, and they have a young kid named L.J. Collier. And I watched him against Arizona, and I thought, oh, okay, here we go. All right, here we go. So if you go back to your, do you think, is it possible to solve a major problem with a football team halfway through a season?
Yeah, it is possible. I think when coaches look at the things that you don't do right and see a way to correct it, the great coaches are going to be able to correct those players. And if the players buy into what the coach is saying, it's going to be easy for them to execute. I think defensively, it's easy to fix that side of the ball whenever it's turmoil. You just got to pay attention to detail. And I've seen that happen on several teams that I played on, specifically in 2011 when we was 4-8 and we needed to win the last four to finish 8-8. And we did it, and our defense stepped up, and we was playing a totally different scheme. And, it was the attitude and the mindset of the guys, but it was also them buying into the scheme and just believing in it because they didn't believe in it before, and we was able to rip off 4 straight. So it can be done.
So I'm watching Kyler Murray yesterday, and he struggled against Belichick, and Belichick owns young quarterbacks. So, and again, I'll say this, and I look at it now. I look at it now in hindsight, and I think, oh, of course I should have seen this. Yeah, of course, Tua's going to struggle against him, and Herbert's going to struggle against him, and Kyler's going to struggle against him. What does a great coach? Maybe you face Belichick. What does Bill do specifically that makes it because everybody could copy what New England's doing? What does he do that makes even Kyler Murray struggle? Young guys struggle.
It's almost like Andy Reid. I think in the National Football League, you have coaches who are good coaches, and you have coaches who are great coaches. And Andy Reid is a great offensive mind. And when I think of some of the great defensive minds in the NFL, I instantly think about Mike Tomlin. I think about Bill Belichick. Why? Because they don't change. They believe in their scheme, and then they don't have to have players out there who are marquee players, Pro Bowl players that just play hard and play within the system, and they get guys to buy in. And the one thing to buying into a system is you got to like what you're doing. Players got to go home and say, "Oh, this scheme is amazing. We're gonna win with this scheme. I like it. We're gonna have opportunities. We're gonna create turnovers," and it becomes a reality. And when it does, it makes it easier to go out and play for a coach like Bill Belichick. But it all starts with the scheme. He's one of the greatest defensive minds the game has ever seen.
What am I to make of Cleveland? They're 8-3. They clearly have taken the ball mostly out of Baker Mayfield's hands. I do think this. They got the right coach, Kevin Stefanski. There's no noise. There's no chatter. There's no cockiness. But you look at them and you're like, I know they're 8-3. I don't like them again. I look at them and I'm like, I wouldn't like them against any of the good teams. What do you make of Cleveland?
I'll say this, Colin. Everything that I accomplished in my career, and the way I had to do it, the way it had to happen, especially early on when I was in Atlanta, I would trade it all for the way the Cleveland Browns are playing right now. Running the football and defense. Baker Mayfield's job is so easy right now. We always talk about managing the game. This is a true scenario of a guy just managing the game and doing it the way it's supposed to be done. And, as he do it, they continue to win. He don't turn the ball over. He don't have to worry about distributing the ball and putting the ball in this person's hands or this person getting their touches. Baker Mayfield can just be Baker Mayfield. And credit to the Cleveland Browns organization for building this type of environment around him because it made their guy successful who's under the spotlight and under a lot of scrutiny. And it's made their team better. Now they sit at 8-3, and it's something to be proud about.
Did you ever have a year like that where you felt it was an easier year?
No. I can't think of a year where I came out of it like, man, the defense performed. I take no credit away from the defense I played with. I love every single teammate that I had. But it's never been a season where I was like, oh, the defense carried us that year. Not at all.
At least you're honest. I appreciate that.
I'm an honest man.
All right, great seeing you, buddy. Mike Vick.
All right, appreciate it.
Brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. Coming up next, Denver people are complaining. They're saying, hey, they should have canceled the game. And the Ravens, they're playing tomorrow night. Should the NFL cancel the games, push them down the road? I've got my thoughts on that coming up. Plus, Colin right, Colin wrong. Top of next hour.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. My guests would include influential figures like Charlemagne the God, Dr. Jess, and Tony Robbins.
Martin Luther King said, a man, or you could say today a person, who hasn't found something they're willing to die for isn't fit to live. Those pretty strong words. But I really believe in my soul that what changes people is when you find something to serve more than yourself.
So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast. That's right, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcasts.
One scoop, all it takes. mdrivestart.com. mdrivestart.com. Protein shake, had one this morning. Vitamins, minerals, proteins, digestive enzymes. mDrive Start. So one of the uglier games yesterday, I didn't spend a ton of time watching it. The Saints crushed Denver. Denver had to use basically a scout team wide receiver, Kendall Hinton, to be a quarterback because COVID outbreak on their team. And, a lot of people are saying it's unfair. The NFL should have pushed it back. And my takeaway is no. No, Jeff Driscoll, a quarterback for the Broncos, had tested positive. And then later in the week, players around him for Denver, quarterbacks for Denver, did not wear a mask around him. That's on Denver. That's not on the NFL to babysit. The NFL is not being subtle here. It's a cutthroat league. It always has been. They'll cut you. Tom Brady could be cut tomorrow. You got to know the company you go work for. You got to know their business sensibility. This is not the NBA. It's not what it is. It's not baseball, 10-year contracts. It's not international soccer. Stars sometimes don't pay taxes. They're dramatic. They date supermodel. NFL's hard. They're cutthroat. Bottom line, the Shield wins. Shield's more important than almost all the players. And the reality is, they've been fining people and taking away draft picks. They've never been subtle about this. Here's the rules. Follow them. We'll give you weekly reminders. And if you don't play. And so, Denver, we're going to make an example of you. I got no problem with it. By the way, the Baltimore Ravens, they're to blame for this mess. I feel bad, but they had a strength and conditioning coach. I know his name, I won't say it. Who was a non-master. Spread it throughout the team. Who pays the price? The Steelers, who didn't get a game check. Follow the rules. The well-run organizations in this league. Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Rams, Seattle, Green Bay. They're not having outbreaks. Be well run. Be responsible. This is not on the NFL. At some point, the NFL's the parent, and the players are the kids, and the NFL's like, okay, here's the ground rules, here's the curfew. And by the way, I feel bad. Do we treat COVID like an injury? I know people that have gotten it, and they're responsible people. I'm not pointing this and that, but the Baltimore situation and the Denver situation, those are on the teams and the players. And again, you people are picking it. At the grocery store I go to, I don't go as much as I used to, everybody wears masks, and I'm looking at studies where they say even wearing masks, the grocery store is like ground zero. People get it. So I'm not saying just irresponsible people get COVID. We're flying on planes. You hope you don't get it. But these two situations, teams have to own up to it. The NFL's not been subtle. They have not been the permissive parent. Fines, draft picks. The Saints got caught in their locker room after the game, having a party, videotaping it, not wearing masks. Got fined. It's on you. The league told you they didn't want it. Got to follow directions. All right, so I don't talk boxing much on this show, but I watched the Mike Tyson Roy Jones Jr. fight. Yeah, I did. It was $50, whatever.
I watched it also.
Yeah, whatever. So, I don't care if you agree with this or not, but Mike Tyson's 54. Prove me wrong. I think he could, if given the opportunity, be heavyweight champ of the world still. I saw George Foreman do it. He was in worse shape than Tyson. And George Foreman didn't hit any harder than Mike Tyson. And the heavyweight division was better when Foreman was around than it is now. Can you name 3 heavyweights? Mike Tyson was clearly instructed against Roy Jones Jr. Don't hit above the shoulders. He could have ended that thing 4 punches in. Roy Jones Jr., the only reason, he even admitted after the fight, I'm sore. He was exhausted. Mike Tyson was told, don't go too high. So Tyson basically worked the body. Tyson could have ended this thing anytime he wanted to. And you call me crazy, this was an orchestrated, planned event. It was in Los Angeles. They weren't going to allow knockdowns, whatever that means. But they always tell you in boxing, this was not a draw. It was ruled a draw. It was not a draw. One guy was in shape. One guy had good movement. One guy still has power. In boxing, they always tell you, the last thing to go is power. You lose your legs. You lose your mobility. You lose your interest. Mike Tyson, I watched him and I thought, he's in great shape. If you gave Mike Tyson another 6 months and fought Tyson Fury, put him in there. And you know what? I'd watch. Because here's the thing. It's not the NHL or baseball or the NBA and the NFL. You got standings. When it comes to boxing, it's an event. And Mike Tyson, I like his events. And I sat there and I spent $49.99. And I'm sitting out there because I had to work the next morning, and I'm like, can we get to it? I know, the musical acts are great, love Snoop, can we get to the fight? My wife kept saying, if they fought yet, and I'm like, no, this is what they do, you pay $50, and they make you sit through a bunch of stuff, because they want more people to sign up, and everybody got rich. But I'm sitting watching that, and at the end, I'm like, I don't feel guilty, I enjoyed it, and Tyson, given fair opportunities, I think could fight anybody in the world right now. Roy Jones Jr., he just took a paycheck. But Tyson, I'm like, prove me wrong. Put him in the ring. Tyson said he's going to fight again. I don't want any stipulations, no qualifiers. I don't want it orchestrated. I don't want it planned. Let's see him fight. Because I saw Foreman do it, and he wasn't nearly as nimble as Tyson, and I don't think he had the power that Mike Tyson still possesses. Colin right, Colin wrong on a Monday. Next.
You probably heard a lot about Portland on the news, about the tear gas and the federal agents with snatch vans and the anarchy. What you probably haven't heard is the truth, because the reality of what happened in Portland is so much stranger, so much more incredible than what the mainstream media was willing to show. I'm Robert Evans, and along with all of the other voices on my podcast, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, I was there. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, Earthlings. It's Kesha. I'm so excited to be bringing you my new podcast, Kesha and the Creepies. You may know me from my party jams like We Are Who We Are and TikTok, but it's my curiosity for the unexplainable, the mystical, the magical that drives these conversations with exciting pop culture guests and experts in the occult and all things creepy. Listen and follow Kesha and the Creepies on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thanks for listening to The Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for The Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go. It's Monday, hour 2, live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, FS1. Joy Taylor is joining me. By the way, I said this last night on Twitter, and I've felt this since I was a kid, I never buy into this. I'm a true fan and you're not. What do you want, a cookie? I would never sit at Lambeau Field in an awful game at 10:15. But by the way, there was no fans there. There was probably 50 fans in the game. Awful football game on a Sunday night and freezing. And I said, I don't like sports that much. And everybody's like, you're not a true fan. To which I say, what do you get for that?
I mean, the fan police are they're really special.
I will say this. I'm amazed by fans. But and since I was I remember going to a Washington Husky game in a driving rainstorm, and I was 13 and thinking, I'm just going to watch from home.
Yeah, I mean, no, I've sat through many horrible weather games. My brother played Akron, Ohio. Google the weather there right now. Imagine it's not great. All of them. I went to every single one of my brother's college games.
And it's always better at home.
It's just it's hard. It's a hard experience. It's
driving
like you
driving
get there
away.
and then you sit there and then your butt falls asleep or you're freezing. You have to get up and keep moving. You're like drinking 7 hot chocolates to try and stay warm. It's personally, I don't find it to be a fun experience. For supporting purposes, if my brother is playing, yes, I will do it. Otherwise, you'll find me at home.
Yeah, about twice a year. I'm like, now it'd be different if you give me courtside to watch LeBron.
Yeah.
But cold weather NFL games, the NFL's way better at home.
I think you and I might just be like a little fragile, so we need comfort and controlled environments. But I will say though, I do miss the fans. I miss the fans.
I mean, obviously, I told my wife last night as they did the aerial shot. I'm like, look at this. This looks ridiculous.
Especially at Lambeau, it felt like you could, and you had like the 500 fans there. You could feel it. But shout out to y'all because I'm not gonna be doing that.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Monday, Colin right, Colin wrong. Fire away.
Where Colin was right.
I said when Drew Brees got hurt and Sean Payton put in Taysom Hill, I said, okay, media, stop. Sean Payton knows the offense better than we do. He's now 7-0 without Drew Brees in 2 years. Plus 76-point differential. Sometimes resumes matter, and don't get me wrong, I think coaches, even successful ones, I criticize Belichick's drafting prowess, but in the end, the media was so, they wanted this Jameis Winston thing, and so did I, but he knows what he's doing. And by the way, they're paying Taysom Hill like a lot of money to be a third-string quarterback. They want to see if he can play, and what do you know? They're 2-0 and 2 blowout wins.
Where Colin was wrong.
I'm going to rescind my John Gruden Coach of the Year for a couple of weeks. First of all, what was that? They were not prepared to play. 11 penalties, 3 of 12 on third down, 5 turnovers, 6 points. It was one of the, and by the way, you can't convince me Atlanta's got significantly better players than the Raiders. They were not ready to play when the plane landed. Really bad Raider performance.
Where Colin was right.
When everybody fell in love with Sean McVay 2 years ago, I said he's not even the best coach in his own division. It's Kyle Shanahan, and I like Sean McVay. Shanahan swept Sean McVay and the Rams again this year. 2 years, 4-0 against McVay. Plus, 3 of the 4 games, Shanahan has been the underdog. So he beat him with Nick Mullins, he's beat him with Jimmy Garoppolo, and when Garoppolo wasn't 100%, and I like Sean McVay, and I think he's one of the top 10 coaches in the NFL, but if you go resume to resume, game to game, Shanahan owns McVay right now, and he beat him last night with Nick Mullins as a big dog.
Where Colin was wrong.
Matt Nagy's a good guy, and I really like him, but I had somebody close to Chicago say, watch out, he's not very experienced, and right now I can't support him. Listen, here's the reality. They don't have an identity on either side of the football. Their defense has better players than the performance and productivity. The offense can't get its act together. I'll just say this, it's not impossible. I'm watching Joe Judge with the Giants and Brian Flores with the Miami Dolphins. You can tell very quickly if a team has a direction, a point of view, and an identity or a personality. And as much as I may like Matt Nagy, his lack of experience in Kansas City, he didn't call the plays very long. He's being exposed.
Where Colin was right.
And I said a month ago when the Giants were 2-7, I said, no, these are the Dolphins of last year. They're not bad. They have now won 3 straight. They lead the NFC East. Now, yesterday Daniel Jones got hurt, so it was a really bad second half with Colt McCoy. This team, they won that OBJ trade that everybody banged on the Giants. They got Dexter Lawrence, Jabril Peppers in the box. They ended up getting a starting guard to upgrade their offensive line. And again, they have had the lead in the 4th quarter in 6 straight games. Now, I don't know how they're going to play without Daniel Jones, but the New York Giants are the best team in that division, and I actually think if Daniel Jones comes back healthy, they are capable. They won't be favored, but they're capable of winning a playoff game.
Where Colin was wrong.
I'm going to take a wrong on everything the last year with the New York Jets. Adam Gase is awful. Sam Darnold had his receivers. He was bad. Nothing works. Nothing. Yesterday, and by the way, their go-to guy on offense is 37-year-old Frank Gore. They couldn't move the ball. They're 0-11. And listen to Adam Gase and his complete nonsense after the game. He was caught red-handed in the play-calling duties.
Adam, why did you take over the play calling?
I didn't take over. We did this. We've done the same thing the last 4 games.
We were watching Dowell for the whole game. He wasn't doing anything. I mean, he was just standing there.
He tells me it's not hard. This is not hard. We go through it the drive before. Hey, these are the 3 plays. I do the third downs.
So what happens after the 3 plays when you have a series? Because we were watching one where Dowell was talking to Frank Pollock. He wasn't calling the plays. You were.
What part of the game was it?
Oh, boy.
I want to say that was the third.
Yeah, when we got down, then I was trying to do some of the 2-minute stuff.
I've never been more wrong. He has no business being a head coach.
Where Colin was right?
Either did Matt Patricia, and I didn't buy into him week 1. He dressed like a frat boy. He was arrogant. He was unlikable. He never got buy-in from the players. 13, 29, and 1. And that's with Matt Stafford, who is certainly a competent quarterback. How great he is, I don't know. But, you know, it's the reality is these are $3 and $4 and $5 billion franchises. And this is Adam Gase and Matt Patricia. Do you understand you're the face of the franchise? Look it, act it, talk it. This isn't high school football. Take that stupid pencil out of your ear. Get it together. You know, and again, it's this New England arrogance where proximity to Belichick, well, here's the way we do it. Well, you don't have any buy-in from the players. By the way, Belichick admits he didn't get buy-in from many of the players in Cleveland because he didn't have Super Bowls. Andy Reid now will get more buy-in because he's got Super Bowls. Tomlin gets buy-in. Sean Payton. If you've never been a head coach, you got to earn it. It's not granted.
Where Colin was wrong.
I never understood Mitch Trubisky. I didn't like him in college. I didn't like the Bears drafted him. I don't understand it. Now, this is Tom Herman. I don't get the Trubisky thing. I don't. I don't like the way he throws the ball. He had a 74 quarterback rating last night. He's the nicest guy in the world. But when the Bears drafted him, I didn't get it. I thought Deshaun Watson was the better pick. He was only a 1-year starter in college. But for whatever reason, Chicago, even when he was winning games and got to the playoffs, I didn't like Mitch Trubisky. And last night, he had 3 straight plays in succession yesterday that were just brutal, including an underthrown pick. Stop telling me he's got a good enough arm. He's a Northern Division quarterback with bad mechanics, therefore it affects the way he throws the football.
Where Colin was wrong.
Tom Herman. It's not working at the University of Texas. I liked Tom Herman when he got hired by the Longhorns. Why wouldn't I? I talked to him. He was smart. He was aggressive. He had a presence. Urban Meyer signed up for him. He was a good recruiter earlier in his career. But he's 7-7 in his last 14 games. There's no excuse to lose to Iowa State in football. Stop it. Texas has 300 Division I football players in their state. Iowa's got 9 a year. Now, Iowa State's well coached, but there's just no excuse. Again, Texas recruiting is bad right now. They're getting beat in state. The word is he's a little too intense and a little arrogant and does not curry favor with a lot of the long-standing popular high school football coaches. I'm not inside the program, but I thought it would work, and it doesn't work.
Where Colin was right?
College football has a competition problem. People ask me all the time, you used to talk way more college football, and I say, yeah, it used to be more interesting. Alabama crushed Auburn this weekend. Clemson crushed Pittsburgh, and that's okay. But when Alabama's winning average games by 30 points, we have a problem. The sport has no CEO. It's time they got one. Scholarships, 70 per team, not 85. And if you make the playoff in back-to-back years, cut it down to 60 to 65 scholarships. Right now, this sport is so lopsided that it's hurting the ratings, it would hurt attendance. Alabama struggled to sell tickets in recent years to their student body. College football do not become college basketball. Translation, irrelevant. Hire a CEO, stop the balkanization of college football where every conference is doing it on their own. Let's get this thing corralled. Fewer scholarships per team. Spread the talent out. Where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. And I got no problem having good teams, but literally Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson feel like they're a mile from like Texas A&M. I watched Texas A&M this weekend. They're supposed to be the 5th best team in college football, and they're terrible. They're a mess. All right, Mark Schlereth on a Monday is joining me next. What to make of the Denver situation, or the Broncos to blame and not the league?
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
In the summer and autumn of 2020, the city of Portland, Oregon became the center of a vast media blitz. Thousands of viral videos showing marching federal agents and police officers, tear gas, black-clad anarchists and fires went viral all over the internet. What didn't go viral was the truth, because the story of Portland's Black Lives Matter movement and of the Portland protests of 2020 is so much stranger than I think the mainstream media would ever be willing to cover. I was there, and more importantly, the people that I talked to for my new show, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, were there. Through their experiences, you'll learn the truth, both about Portland and about what's coming for the rest of the United States in the next few years. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This week's Thursday night football game between the Cowboys and Ravens has been moved to next Monday, December 7th. So it'll be a special Monday game on Fox starting at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, also available on NFL Network and streaming on Prime Video.
You know, everybody likes to pick on me because I picked the Ravens to be great this year, and they're not great. But I'd like to remind you, I picked the Browns to make the playoffs and the Bengals to be bad. I was right on those two teams. So I whiffed on the Steelers and Ravens. I nailed the Browns, and I nailed the Bengals. Why doesn't anybody ever say, you know, Colin, you really did a good job on the Bengals-Browns? I don't get it.
I can't get into people that are like crazy about predictions.
I know, we're guessing
Like,
here.
were your predictions perfect? I haven't been able to see where your predictions from the beginning of the season. I don't know. We're all just guessing.
I mean,
Stuff happens.
they're educated guesses, but Baltimore's unraveled. All right.
Yeah, this is not what we expected.
Mark Schlereth, Fox Sports NFL analyst, he actually did the Bronco game yesterday. Of course, 3 Super Bowls, Mark Schlereth, multiple Pro Bowler. So he just drove down the road, stayed at a hotel. Those are the best games to do. So let's start with this. So the NFL said, listen, we're not pushing your game back. Your quarterbacks, that's a you problem. Were you disappointed? Do you think the NFL's sending a message? How did it fall for you? How did it land for you, Mark?
Well, I think first and foremost, in regards to the Broncos, I don't think people are actually trying to be malicious in their intent to deceive the National Football League, right? Some guys didn't wear masks. Every one of us has walked out of their car and walked into the grocery store and said, oh, shoot, I left my mask in my car, and went back to get it. You know, I think there was some innocence in that. And so I think that's part of it, but you have to understand the NFL just put this mandate out. They said you've got to be vigilant in your mask wearing. It's 100% of the time. And I think there was kind of this sacrificial lamb kind of situation. You know, Jimmy Johnson said this a long time ago when he was coaching the Dallas Cowboys. He said, listen, if the 4th-string running back falls asleep in meetings, I cut him. If Emmitt Smith falls asleep in meetings, we nudge him. Like, that's the way it goes, right? And the Broncos are not a playoff team. They have created this situation for themselves, and I think they were made an example of. And you know, that's the NFL. You put yourself in the situation. I think that's the one thing that you have to understand. You, as an organization, did not follow the protocol. You put yourself in this situation. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Nothing's fair in life. And you put yourself in the situation, and you're going to be the sacrificial lamb, this sliding scale of justice, if you will. You're going to be the ones that punished and are made an example of.
So it's interesting because we know the Chiefs and the Steelers are good, but I think it is remarkable. The Saints are now 7-0 last 2 years with backup quarterbacks, and I don't think anybody in the league could do that. I know Kansas City had to use a backup last year, and they you know, you can lose games that way. What do you make of Taysom Hill? It's interesting. He throws better than I thought he would. You can win games with him. What do you make of the Saints with Taysom Hill?
Well, I will tell you this, first and foremost, of all the games or all the teams that I have done this year, there is no team more talented than the New Orleans Saints, top to bottom, both offensively and defensively. So, like, they are a really good good football team. Taysom Hill is an interesting cat. He's one of the most athletic, one of the most, just one of the most interesting players in the league. In that, when you look at him, he can play running back, he can play fullback, he can play the U tight end, the Y tight end, he can play the F slot receiver, and he can play quarterback. I mean, there's not a position on the football field that this guy can't play.
Right.
Now, from a timing standpoint, his timing was off in the passing game yesterday. It really was not good. There was a couple of throws that he just was hesitant about. Like, I don't trust what I'm seeing, and therefore he was a little late with the football yesterday. That has got to be cleaned up, but that comes with playing, right? I mean, this guy, up until this point, he played multiple positions, and think about this. He walks into the facility, and he's in special teams meetings. He's a half hour late to the quarterback meetings, then he's got to bounce over to the running back meetings, bounce to the tight end meetings. Oh, let's go to the wide receiver meeting. I mean, this is the most versatile player in all of football, so, I expect him to be a little bit late with some of his reads, some of his throws. So he's an interesting cat. He's an unbelievable, exceptional football player, and he is a guy that you can win with because you can do so many things from the quarterback position with him in there.
I was saying this earlier. My only knock on Kansas City, and I think it's unavoidable, is that they're so brilliant and they score so dramatically, and sometimes with so little effort, and they strike so quickly, that it is hard to have that sense of urgency every drive. And, last night, if you go look at the stat sheet, they dominate time of possession. They're great on third downs. They dominate first downs. Mahomes throws for 500 yards. Tyreek Hill has 270. And they win 27-24 because in the second half they didn't move the ball much. You played on a couple of great teams. Explain to me that when scoring is sometimes so easy, is it hard to convince yourself out of a locker room off a touchdown? Hey fellas, we gotta grind her out here. Is that a real psychological warfare with yourself sometimes in this league?
Oh, I think that's part of it. I mean, I think there's also, you feel like you can score at any moment. You feel like, hey man, we're so good that anytime we go out there, we can put a drive together. I remember playing a Dallas Cowboys team where we scored on our first 7 possessions. Like, touchdown, 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 touchdown. It was like easy. And so I think that's human nature. Mentally, you relax on a drive. You relax on a series. And those things happen to you. But I think the other thing that's real about this Kansas City team is complementary football. When you can score in a minute and 12 seconds, guess what happens to your defense? They're always out there.
Yeah.
They feel like they have always got to play. And so, when I went back through and I watched every defeat the Kansas City Chiefs had for the last 2 years, every one of them were similar in that the other team dominated the time of possession, whether it was they ran it down their throats or whether it was a short passing game, they just got first downs and completions. And ultimately, every one of those games, even though it was like 40-20 in time of possession, every one of those games came down to the last drive. And every one of those games was like 30-29. I mean,
Right.
It was ridiculous, right? Except one was like a 19-13 game was Indianapolis a couple of years ago. But the bottom line is, there's a formula. You've got to possess the ball. You've got to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. You've got to do all those things. And guess what? They're still going to score 30. So every time you get in the red zone, you better score touchdowns. And I like that pressure is immense. And they just know, heck, listen, man, even if we're down, we can score in 47 seconds. That's who we are as an offense. It was like when John Elway walked in the huddle. We could be down by 2 touchdowns, and you got them right where you want them. We're good. Let's go.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Speaking of John Elway, he had Dan Reeves, and they're both very successful, but there was, it didn't quite jive, right? And then he goes to Mike Shanahan. They become best friends, workout buddies, all that. It works. So I'm not blaming Brady or Arians, but they're different cats. And you were, and sometimes, like, their lifestyles are different, their personalities. Brady is much more reluctant to talk publicly. He's more political. Arians is just let her rip guy. And I watch him and I think to myself, I don't worry about Brady's age and his arm and all that stuff. I don't care. But I do think there's a personality thing here. They see the world differently. And I mean, you take me to your Elway Reeves thing. Is it possible these cats are just never going to be cohesive?
Yeah, I think he even goes beyond that. I think it was Peyton Manning and Gary Kubiak. When Gary Kubiak came here, Peyton Manning as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. And there was always this juxtaposition of two philosophies.
Right.
And they never really quite jived. And, Peyton Manning wanted to be in shotgun and run everything from the shotgun, and he wanted to call his own plays type of thing and say, hey, what's best for us in this particular situation? Because that's what he did all in his Indianapolis career and what he had done under John Fox. And Gary Kubiak said, no, we want to limit that stuff. We want to put you, underneath the center. That's where our running game functions the best. And those two butted heads. And, then Peyton Manning gets injured, and he spends 7 weeks on the bench. And when he comes back, there's really more of an ability or more of or less of a reluctancy to basically stick or adhere for Gary Kubiak to exactly what they did. They found a happy medium where Peyton actually kind of ran the offense. Now, that team won a Super Bowl, but that team was really based on its defense. And I just think when I watch Tampa, and I've done several of their games, they're like Brady the last couple of years has always had that easy answer, that check down to the running backs. That's something that's short and something, that they're running option routes underneath to Julian Edelman. And Bruce Arians is one of those guys, no risk it, no biscuit. I want to push it down the football field. And I don't think there's been enough easy answers in this offense for Brady to operate efficiently like he normally does.
Yeah.
And so there is this kind of butting of the heads, kind of philosophical butting of the heads, that I think they've got to figure out here in the next 4 or 5 weeks. Otherwise, their playoff run is going to be short.
Mark Schlereth, 3 rings, 2 Pro Bowls, did the Broncos Saints game. Good talking to you, buddy.
Likewise, my friend.
Good stuff. Carshield.com. You're on the road. It's the holidays. Something breaks down. You're freaking out. Don't go to Carshield.com. The code is HERD. 10% off. A deductible may apply. Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Look at the Browns.
What about the Browns? 8-3 Browns.
8-3.
Wow.
Winning and stuff.
Stefanski, I'll tell you this. Remember, here's the interesting part. So when the Jags got to the AFC Championship,
we couldn't
with Blake
hear enough
Bortles,
about him.
yeah. So with Blake Bortles, so they got duped. They knew it wasn't about Blake Bortles, and they signed him to an extension. When the Bears were winning with Trubisky, we all said it's not Trubisky, and they fell for it. The Browns are winning, but if you look at all the analytics, they're winning despite Baker. So here's what I'm saying if I'm the Cleveland Browns. Don't be the Jags or the Bears with Bortles and Trubisky. Your quarterbacks really are winning despite him. Be very careful about falling for the, we're winning games, the quarterback is, because that's what Jacksonville did with Bortles. And we all knew watching it, Bortles was an issue. So I watched, nothing against Baker, but I watch them and I'm like, they're great. They are really average at quarterback.
I don't think they're winning despite him. I think that he's doing what they're asking him to do, and it's working. And based off of Baker's skill set, and based off of the way that this team is built, this is how they should be playing, and that's why they're winning.
How come he's not accurate anymore? Wasn't that his thing?
It was his thing.
He's like, it's not his size or his arm. His accuracy is mad.
Well, he had his first game with a winning touchdown, or with a passing touchdown, since week 7 against the Bengals. But they beat the Jags 27-25, got their 8th win of the season, and that assures that they will not finish with a losing record for the first time since 2007, and they're also on track to make their first playoff appearance since 2002. The AFC North was not looking like how we thought it was going to look.
No.
The Steelers are 10-0, the Browns are 8-3, Ravens 6-4, and obviously the Bengals are out of it 2-8-1. But if you look at the remaining schedule for the Browns, they are at Tennessee, then they have Baltimore, at the Giants, at the Jets, and then Pittsburgh. So kind of interesting remaining schedule for the rest of the teams in the AFC North. That we know obviously what the Steelers are going to do.
Brown's schedule is pretty darn tough. Let's be fair. Tennessee.
Like if you look at the Ravens can get this win next Monday. They're obviously going to struggle against the Steelers, but if they can get back on track after that,
they could win 5 straight.
The Browns' schedule is brutal.
It's brutal. Cleveland's got it. So if I predict Cleveland goes 9-7. I look at their schedule right now, and they look 9-7 to me. My WL pocket calendar. Browns are becoming, and I thought they'd pick up a lot of wins early, but in the end, this is tough. Giants are a real football team. And
Giants are a real team. We don't know what Baltimore is going to be in that game, and Tennessee at any moment can just blow you out. So these next couple games, at least for the AFC North, are going to be really interesting. But I got to say, give credit where credit's due. Stefanski is doing an amazing job there.
He's been great.
He has.
Terrific.
So after falling behind 17-3, the Rams rallied back and seemed to be in control control after scoring 17 straight points, but 49ers kicked 2 field goals in the last 3 minutes and 11 seconds to win 23-20 and sweep the season series against the Rams. Jared Goff once again struggled holding on to the ball, committed 3 turnovers, and he has now had 3 games with multiple turnovers in his last 4, starting with the Week 8 loss to Miami.
No, he was Goffle. He just one of 2 things. He does. When he's a little uncomfortable and he's forced to move in the pocket, he makes mistakes. He does. And yesterday, again, watch when he's making mistakes. What happens? Pressure. And it's not that he gets, I can tell 2 series in with every Rams game. Against Tampa Bay, I was like 2 series in, I'm like, oh, he's comfortable. They're going to be very good.
The weird thing about Goff is we know what he's capable of.
Yes.
So it's just the consistency that is so strange. But you got to give credit to Shanahan, and Nick Mullins is doing a better job of taking care of the ball. Only 1 interception, no passing touchdowns, but he was 24-35 for 252 yards.
Yes.
So can't take anything against them, away from them. Their next 2 home games, week 13 and 14, will be at State Farm Stadium in Arizona. They have a new COVID restriction in their area, so that's just what we're dealing with this year.
I try to stay away from politics, but man, California's had some real overreaches as a government. I'm sorry.
I'm glad I don't have to make any of those decisions. That's what I will say. I don't agree with all of them, but I'm glad I'm not the one having to make them. So the Raiders did. What's the Raiders? How does this happen?
Well, okay, how about this? The old high-low theory. Take out yesterday for the Raiders and take out their win over Kansas City. So yesterday's their low, that's their high. What are they? A good football team.
Yes.
They're good. So take the crap out, take your worst performance, and then take the win over the Chiefs at Arrowhead out, and what are they? They're a B football team, which needs one more draft to figure the defense out.
Well, this was a disaster.
Oh, it was awful.
They turned the ball over a season-high 5 times, 4 of them committed by Derek Carr. They also had a season-high 11 penalties for 141 yards. They
Terrible on 3rd down.
Were held without a touchdown for the first time this season and only managed to put up 2 field goals.
Oh, by the way, I bet Atlanta last week. They come back this week. The last Atlanta Falcons game I bet and won was the Super Bowl loss to the Patriots. I picked New England. If somebody can explain that the Atlanta Falcons are the Bermuda Triangle of my wallet. Literally, every time I bet them, I lose. It doesn't matter if I pick up. It's incredible. I've never had a team I can't ever win.
I'm not going to lie. I saw this yesterday, and I did think,
what in the hell is this?
It's a week off. I don't know. I don't have an explanation for it. They do have talents. And they are playing better since they have moved on from Dan Quinn. Yeah. So they have figured some things out.
They've been great for 5 weeks. I bet them once. They stunk. And they didn't even show up the week I bet them.
Well, for the Raiders, they are obviously still in the hunt in the AFC playoff picture. The rest of their schedule, they're at 6-5 with the Ravens at 6-4 and Patriots at 5-6. The rest of their schedule is at the Jets, then the Colts, Chargers, and Dolphins at home, then at the Broncos.
Well, doesn't it feel like the Raiders are so much better than the Patriots, like all year long? And you look up and they're separated by a game, and didn't the Patriots beat them? So, I mean, all year, the Raiders have been a very positive, optimistic story. They're 6-5. The Patriots are like, man overboard, they're tanking, they're 5-6. I mean, in the end, this thing, outside of a couple teams at the top...
Well, sometimes we get a little caught in narratives. And,
of course.
You know, if they had a spectacular win, obviously beating Kansas City, but their schedule's not brutal going forward. It's just going to depend on how the rest of those teams do.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
It's so funny because sports gambling now is much more legal in America. Supreme Court passed it, and the states are rolling it out. So more and more people are betting. And what you find with this has been a weird year of the NFL because of all the COVID stuff. I mean, you wake up one morning like Sunday, and I'm like, oh, 4 guys for this team are out. Like, I love the Ravens this weekend, and then all of a sudden, Thursday, the team gets COVID. It was going to be one of my bets of the week, and I'm like, okay, I guess I... And then the league later moved the game to Tuesday. You're finding out now when you bet football. It's very easy if you could bet future bets, like who's going to win their division. But week to week, it's a crazy league. Niners beat them again? They beat the Rams again with Nick Mullins in LA? Like, makes no sense.
I don't know which one is more surprising, the Atlanta game or that game.
It's just crazy. What do we make of the Packers? Talk that next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. Season 1 had some amazing guests, including YouTube sensation Liza Koshy and NBA All-Star Kevin Love.
Nothing robs us of more human potential than mental illness.
This season will have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes, including the amazingly talented Anthony Ramos.
How do we dig deeper in what we say as artists if we aren't digging deeper in our own lives?
TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio.
This time last year, I was on the bus to field hockey games. I didn't even do TikTok.
And to give back, my guests will also talk about a charity that's close to their hearts.
Come on, Sammy, doing all this important work in the world. I'm saying 17, man, come on.
Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Cliff Avril played for a decade in the NFL, 5 in Detroit, then 5 in Seattle, where he was a Pro Bowler and won a Super Bowl. In fact, he's the only player in NFL history, or the first player to go from a winless team to a Super Bowl team. It's never happened before, or he's one of the only guys that's ever done. Cliff Avril is joining us from Seattle. The Seahawks tonight face Philadelphia. So I've been saying this, is that Seattle has all the ingredients to be great. A coach, playmakers, Russ, special teams. The question is the pass rush. So I watched them play the last game, and Carlos Dunlap and Jamal Adams in the box, and then L.J. Collier. And I thought to myself, okay, Cliff, this is interesting. This is a pass rush, which will obviously elevate the secondary. You have to cover less. So your takeaway on Seattle right now, you cover them, you talk about them daily. Where are they at defensively?
Man, they've taken some major strides. You know, I think, one, it's a little unfair because a lot of people, obviously, of years past, people keep comparing them to the LOB days and all those different things, so they keep trying to recreate those things. But I think this is a different team, a different identity, and they're figuring it out, right? You talk about Jamal Adams being a part of the rush, bringing in Dunlap, I think was huge. Obviously, Bobby, KJ Wright, all those guys play a big role, but more so than anything, I think the biggest thing is the camaraderie piece, right? Most of these guys just got here. You talk about Jamal, he just got here. Dunlap just got here a few weeks ago. So they have to build that camaraderie and that trust in one another, and it's starting to come together. And that's what's exciting about it, because they still have some more games to build that camaraderie to try to make a run in the playoffs.
Now, by the way, Chris Carson, the running back, plays tonight, and it's interesting because you've been in Pete Carroll's locker rooms. He likes a physical offensive team. That's what he likes. He liked it at USC. He likes to run downhill. Chris Carson has struggled. He can't stay healthy. In college, that was a bit of an issue. Should the Seahawks rely on Carson, or to you, if the Seahawks offense is humming, what do they look like?
Well, one, should they bring him? Yes. If he's a healthy Carson, you bring him back. And the reason I say that is because he is very much respected in the NFL. You know, the reason he's been banged up is because of the way he plays. You know, super aggressive. He's looking for contact. All those different things. So I think if he is in the lineup, it's the fear of, right? It's the threat of having him out there. If they hand him the ball off, you know, the linebackers got to get downhill immediately. And then that opens up for the play action. We already know Russ is one of the best deep ball throwers in the game right now. So if you add the play action to it with the threat of run with Carson back there, it gets real scary back there. So yes, I do think you have to bring him along. And if he's able to play, you bring him. Just, again, simple fact of the threat of what he can do and how well he's played in the past. It makes guys want to kind of play up on the line of scrimmage, and Russ goes out there and cooks them.
You know, you played, there's the New England dynasty, and many thought Seattle would be a dynasty. You were great, and you were young. But we say this about the NBA all the time. Dynasties in all sports, they never last as long as you think. There's free agency, there's injuries, there's egos. So I look at Kansas City, and I think, okay, is this going to be the offensive version of what the Seahawks were going to be? When you watch Kansas City, are there any things you worry about long term? Because the Seattle thing, we thought it was an 8-year thing, and it became like a 3-year thing. Can Kansas City become the dynasty Seattle didn't? Anything you see you like or don't like?
Well, the big thing with dynasties in professional sports in general, right? You just mentioned injuries, you mentioned free agency, contracts, all these different things tend to have guys that move on, and guys want to, guys want to cash out, and I'm not mad at them, but you do lose that dynasty feel. But what I think is special about these guys is more Patrick Mahomes. You got Tyreek Hill, you got some of these young players that can play together for a while. Some of these guys are already on their second deal, so you talk about Kelsey and some of those guys, they're on their second deal already, so they'll be together for a little bit. The thing that can damage them and hurt them is when it becomes the ego. Okay, I want the ball more, or I'm the reason why we're winning, or all these different things can play a role and throw a wrench in this dynasty. But right now, these guys are cooking. They're doing some special things. And what's fun about these guys more so than anything is just the play, the way they run plays, all the movement, all the motions, the reverses, all the things that you did as a kid. They're doing it and they're being successful at it. So, and when guys are having fun like that, I think guys will want to stay there, and that's how you'll have end up having a dynasty.
I often say this about the Packers is I say they're the convertible sports car of the NFL. Nobody looks cooler when the sun's out. September, October football. And then it gets cold and you can't drive the convertible sports car. And I watch Green Bay. And when they're playing with a lead, when they're comfortable, when Aaron's comfortable, it is a thing of beauty. Then last week, they can't stop the run game for the Colts, and Aaron sits in the bench and watches the second half. So I watch him last night roll over a bad Chicago team, and I think to myself, what did I learn? They're great with a lead. What do you make... when you were in Seattle, you guys were such a physical team. Green Bay's good, but they're not physical. Do they compare to anybody during your Seattle run that you knew was talented, but you knew they didn't want to get in the octagon, that they were a finesse team over a power team?
Oh man, I would say with Aaron and those guys, as far as for being physical, they've really never been that physical team that say the Seahawks had with the defense or anything like that. But they've always had playmakers. They've always had Aaron Rodgers who can go out there and make any receiver look bad or look good, right? Because that was the big question going into the season. It's like, where's his weapons at? We know Adams, but where are his weapons? And yet he's making things happen. As far as for being physical, I don't think they need to be, because again, they have A-Rod leading the way. He's seen so much football. He's done so much. And you're right. It's always easier when you're on top and you don't have too many things to worry about. But if you're on top, if you have a quarterback that can get you on top, you don't have to worry about those other issues that you just mentioned. But they look great. I mean, they have their moments where they look bad, but you're always in the ball. It's kind of like Russell Wilson. You're always in a ball game when you have A-Rod throwing the rock.
You like Seattle tonight over Philadelphia? What are your thoughts about the game?
Of course. I definitely like the Seahawks. They're trending upwards on the other side of the ball, on the defense side of the ball. We talked about Jamal Adams. We talked about Dunlap, Bobby, all those guys. They're catching their rhythm. They're catching their stride. And then you flip the side. You got Russell Wilson, and obviously he's been playing at a high level with DK and Tyler Lockett. But with Philly, I think the question mark is going to be with Wentz. He hasn't been necessarily playing that well, and I like my odds with the defense trending upwards and Wentz kind of struggling right now.
Good stuff, Cliff Avril, former Seahawk, 10 years in the league. Good talking to you, buddy.
Thanks, always a pleasure.
You bet. The weather can be unpredictable, make it less so. Michelin Endurance XD silicone wiper blades last 2 times longer than other blades. Get them only at Walmart. So Trent Dilfer will join us last hour. So here it's funny about Aaron Rodgers. I would vote him into the Hall of Fame first ballot. I always liked him more than Brett Favre. I think he's more careful with the football. I think he's just a really smart guy. But when I watch Green Bay, it's like, just let me see him against Tennessee in Week 16. Let me just watch him. Because like last night, what do I gain? Crappy division opponent, playing with a lead. Akeem Hicks is out, so they're not going to have much of a pass rush. You're going up against Trubisky. It's not that they're not gifted. It's not that I don't like them. But to me, there's a certain sensibility to the Packers where there's about 3 games a year. They're going to go 13-3. If you look at their schedule, they're going to go 13-3. Now, the good news is many of the teams they play, the toughest matchups for them are mostly AFC teams. They do not match with the Steelers. They don't match with the Steelers' physical play. They do not match up with Tennessee. I do not think they'd match up with the Baltimore. The good news for the Packers is some of the teams in the NFC they play are not always that physical. So that's the good news. But I watched last night, and my takeaway was, what do I get out of this? I know they're going to win. They're playing with a lead. It's a crappy team. And I looked at their schedule this morning, and I'm like, they're going to go 13-3. They'll probably finish 1 or 2. They're going to get home games in the playoffs. If they have to go on the road, I don't trust them against a physical team. But again, if they play New Orleans, Green Bay goes over the top. Well, New Orleans doesn't, so they'll be in that game. They could very well get to a Super Bowl, but God, I don't like them if they had to play a Tennessee or they had to play a Pittsburgh or teams that can run the football.
What about Kansas City?
I think they'd match up better against Kansas City than Pittsburgh. But again, I watched them against the Colts last week. They can't get off the field. Even last night, to be honest with you, Chicago moved the ball. The Bears moved the ball. They just had turnovers. They moved the ball. They didn't have a problem. And Chicago's anemic offensively. Trent Dilfer on the corner, hour 3 on a Monday, live in LA. It's The Herd.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcast.
Are you ready for best life minus the burnout? I'm Zuri Hall from NBC's Access Hollywood, and my new podcast, Hot Happy Mess, is all about the most important VIP, you. You're the star of your life, so own it. Join us each Monday as we discuss relationships, self-care, career, and much more. Our podcast is for mindful, ambitious, diverse millennial women who are ready for more happiness, laughter, peace, and purpose now. Listen to Hot Happy Mess every week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to The Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for The Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Rectech Grills, more than a grill, a lifestyle, built by grillers for grillers. Grill up for the holiday season. RECTEQ, Rectech with a Q.com. Trent Dilfer, how about this story? So I've known Trent for a long time. It's story time by Uncle Colin. So years ago, I worked at another company. I don't know what happened to them. And I brought Trent Dilfer on as a guest. And I went up, I forget the guy's name. I think it's Bob Eaton or something. So I walked up, he was a big manager type. And he'd been there forever, and I said, hey, you guys need to get Dilfer and put him on the air. And he goes, the quarterback, Trent Dilfer? I said, just trust me. He's going to be a great broadcaster. And so, after one spot. And they eventually did, and Trent went there. And then Trent and I would talk all the time, and then about a couple years ago, Trent's like, I want to do more than, I played football, and I broadcast football, but I want to change people's lives. And that's how Trent thinks. And so he gets into this coaching thing. And for years and years, I told him he should get in coaching. He's like, oh, these guys have no life. I want to watch my girls play volleyball. It's a terrible life. But he went and said, I'm going to do high school. So he goes to Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know how he found this place. It's called Lipscomb Academy head football coach. Year 2, they're in the state championship. He's got all sorts of NFL guys on the staff and a big facility. And so it's fun when you watch somebody and they've got these goals. And now enough of sucking up. Let's go talk to Trent Dilfer, 15 years in the NFL, blah, blah, blah. He still needs to shave to help that. Look at that beard. What is going on? So by the way, they just practiced. He got off the field. They practiced in the snow. Who knew it snowed in Tennessee? But apparently it did. So I want to start with this, relationships. And listen, it's hard. When people are successful, they don't want to change. And Brady's the most successful player ever. And Bruce Arians has had success. And I never worried about the age and the arm stuff. I don't worry about that. But I did always say, boy, these are different guys. Their lifestyles, their language. And I look at it and I think, I could see in a year, Josh McDaniels coming down, and Bruce saying, hey, it's been a hell of a career. I don't know. There's something, Trent, here with Bruce and Tom. I don't want to overreact on a Monday, but they are different cats, right? You see that, right?
I totally agree with you. And it was interesting when this thing went down the offseason and Tom went to Tampa. All the questions were, how are they going to coexist? And I just used the word interesting. I had my doubts, but I just thought it would be very interesting. You have a coach that's really lived by the machete, right? His entire career is no risk it, no biscuit. Like, he wants to take the machete and chop the opponent's head off on every play. And then you have the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, that's done it with a surgical tool. You know, he's done it through just dissecting the opponent playing and play out, death by 1,000 cuts. And I'm like, I don't know how these things are going to blend. And now we're seeing it play out. You're seeing a quarterback, the DNA is to take a defense and just surgically tear it apart. And now you have a coach that keeps calling these home run shots. And you can see the disconnect. I mean, you can see him get a big play, a chunk play, and then Tom's like, okay, great, now we have field position. Let's go dissect the defense. And then in comes another big play call. And people wonder, why is Tom so bad on these down-the-field passes? I don't know if it's he's bad or they just keep calling too many of them. It's in the NFL, you just can't call shot after shot after shot. Defenses kind of realize that and start playing back. And you can see the quarterback saying, wait a second, where's the 6-yard option route? Where's the 9-yard tight end crossing route? There's just not enough of that to fit his game. And I really put the blame on Arians and Byron Leftwich for not calling the game around their quarterback. They're calling a system game. They're not calling the game around their QB, who happens to be the greatest that's ever lived.
So it's interesting. When you were on the Ravens championship team, I've always felt teams that are champions built on defense, the Detroit Pistons, the Jordan teams more than people think, the Ravens team you were on, even some of the Bradshaw, the Steeler teams. There's a sensibility that defense and toughness travels on the road. It's week to week. You got the same Ravens defense every week. But offensively geared dynasties, which is the Warriors, the late Kobe and Shaq, Kansas City, looks like they could be. It's tougher because when points come easy and they're brilliant and they're fun, it is hard to create urgency when you score 17 points in like 4 plays. And when I watch Kansas City, I think managing the egos could be part of this, right? Like, it doesn't feel like your Raven team, the psychology of this team.
It really doesn't. And I'm frankly unfamiliar with how you operate in this mode. I never played for a great offensive team, but you do study the history of the league and you study these great offenses. At some point, they're going to get pushed back on. It's not going to be so easy. And then you start looking at critical moments. How do they perform in critical situations? So third down, we know they're fantastic. I mean, Patrick Mahomes can keep any play alive. He's magical on third down. End of game, end of half, magical. But then you get into the tight red area, and I think that's how teams are going to defend them. They know they can't stop them between the 20s. But you get in that tight red area, and that space decreases, and you can't use your speed enough. And what do? They do a lot of trick plays in the red area.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at Kansas City Chiefs, they use a lot of trickeration, a lot of misdirection, a lot of unique stuff, and it's amazing when it works. In fact, we're stealing stuff here at the high school game from them. However, you're going to come up against a team this season going to play man coverage, take away all those trick plays, not let the misdirection get them, and their ability to score touchdowns in the red area will determine whether they can win another world championship. Now, I don't want to say they can't because they've been phenomenal, but if you're looking for an area when they get pressed on, when they get pushed back, it's going to be the closer they get to that goal line. And Steve Young used to say all the time when I worked with them, the more field goals you kick, the closer you are to losing. They got to score touchdowns when they get deep against these great defensive teams.
You know, you've built a high school program up, and then I watch the Saints, and I think to myself, I'm so impressed with an organization. First of all, last 5 years, they have not missed on a first, a second, or a third-round pick. They know what they're doing upstairs. But here they bring in Taysom Hill, and last year it's Teddy Bridgewater. They don't miss a beat. They don't miss a beat. I think that's a lot harder than people think. Is it Sean Payton? Is it Taysom Hill? Is it Mickey Loomis, the GM? Like, who gets credit for it?
I think you got to start with that marriage of Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton. They're brilliant. They're like John Schneider and Pete Carroll in Seattle. I mean, they just get it. They think the same thoughts. They have that simpatico relationship that makes them so great. And then I really think Sean Payton is a kingmaker when it comes to quarterbacks. I don't want to take anything away from Drew Brees. He's amazing. He's fantastic. He probably would have been fantastic without Sean Payton. But I think he would even tell you he's the Hall of Fame player he is because of Sean Payton.
Yeah.
5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater last year, 2-0 with Taysom Hill this year. I mean, his ability to find ways to win offensively is incredible. And to call a game around the person taking the snaps goes back to the Brady Arians thing. Sean Payton doesn't have a system. He is player-centric. He is quarterback-centric. He is going to call the game in such a way that your quarterback is going to gain confidence throughout the game, put him in a position to succeed. That's why his quarterbacks are so successful. It's why every single year when there's this free agent quarterback that needs to be rehabilitated, I always say, find a way to the Saints. Do anything you can to go be a Sean Payton and let him rehab you. You will leave your time in New Orleans a much better player than when you got there. Much like Mike Holmgren was for so many of us. Our careers were kind of on the skids. We weren't sure. We found a way to get to Mike Holmgren because you knew once you got under Mike's tutelage, once you got underneath that umbrella of teaching, you were going to be a better player when you left, and Sean Payton does the same thing.
So it's interesting. It's kind of fascinating. We know Belichick's a very smart guy. He gives young quarterbacks fits. It doesn't matter if they run like Kyler or they're Josh Allen. They can be big, they can be small. There's never been a coach in my life that you just bet him when he faces any quarterback with under 30 starts. So I watched Kyler yesterday. So tell me, you're the quarterback, you go to the line, and Belichick's the defensive coordinator. What is he doing back there? What's the secret sauce that has all the young quarterbacks? One week they're great, the next week they're learning how to play football. What does he do? What did he do to Kyler?
The biggest thing that I've noticed over the years was it wasn't what he did before the ball was snapped. He actually made it look kind of the same every time he went to the line of scrimmage. It's what happened right after the ball was snapped. There's always going to be a subtle movement, a change on the edges, a change in the secondary, a change on the perimeter that's going to take what you thought was going to be the defense and turn it into something else. And then the biggest thing he does is every young quarterback's the same way. They're going to find 3 or 4 things they've settled in on that they really like to do. Okay, that's how they eat their soup. They eat it right-handed with their spoon. And then he's going to take those things away from you and put that spoon in your left hand and make you try to eat soup with your left hand, which is going to be really hard and you're going to spill it all over your face. That's what he does to young quarterbacks is he says, okay, this is Kyler Murray's DNA. He really likes you A, B, C, and D. So we're going to take all those things away after the ball is snapped and see how he does with the rest of the alphabet. My guess, he's not going to be ready to deal with the rest of the alphabet. So that's really been his way of doing it. How he does it, I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But I can tell you that every young quarterback I talk to, every time I've studied him, when I played against him, he has found a way that whatever you like to do the most, you didn't get to do that for 60 minutes.
By the way, you've been with the Seahawks and you've watched Pete Carroll's teachings. I said tonight's a very interesting game for me because it's very difficult in the NFL to start a season with a liability and then solve it. Even if you're a great coach, it's hard because there's injuries and there's cap issues. So Seattle had no pass rush. And then John Snyder smartly goes, let's go get Carlos Dunlap. He's unhappy. He's always been a nice rusher. And then they get Jamal Adams. You know, before that, he's more of a linebacker almost than safety. And then they have a kid named L.J. Collier, who they drafted out of TCU, physical player. He started playing well. So having been there, I said to myself, all the ingredients to win a Super Bowl are there. They don't have a pass rush. And then I watched them against Arizona. I went, oh, okay, timeout. I see a pass rush. So just give me a little bit of Pete Carroll. You've been in the meetings. You've been coaching, and you're a coach now yourself. Can you turn a complete weakness to a strength, or am I being too optimistic with Seattle up front?
No, you're not being too optimistic. It's really the thing that most coaches miss. I think everybody in the talent and coaching business understands the acquisition of talent is important. Where most miss it is the development of that talent. And that's why Pete Carroll could go take over a high school program tomorrow and do what he did at USC and what he's done with the Seahawks, because him and his staff don't just believe in the acquisition of talent, which they've done, but it's the constant day in, day out development of talent. And when you do that and you bring it together, you get better at something that you weren't very good at to start with. And that's what you're seeing him do in Seattle right now is they didn't panic when they weren't getting a pass rush. Now they went out and acquired more talent, but then you have to develop that talent. You have to have it mesh with the rest of your players on defense too. They've tweaked their system a little bit. They're not going to say, we're just going to do this system because this is what we do. They're going to tweak their system around that talent that they've brought in and that they've developed. So they do as good a job as anybody of the development of their team throughout the season. And too often these NFL GMs and coaches say, this is who we are, and this, what you have is what you get the most out of it. They say, no, this is who we are, in preseason. Here's who we are the first quarter of the season. Here we are the second half of the season. Here's who we are after Thanksgiving. And that's really where Pete and Schneider have made their hay is after Thanksgiving because they've invested so much in the development of their team that they're going to play their best football after Thanksgiving, and that's really what you're trying to do when you want to become a championship team.
Lipscomb State Championship game is Thursday. Who do you guys play, by the way?
We play CPA, our rival, who we beat for the first time in 10 years in Week 10. But I don't think either team played their best football, so there should be a dogfight for the state championship.
I can't believe your wife hasn't made you shave that thing yet. Good luck to you going forward, buddy. Trent, Dilfer, good seeing you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, good stuff.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. Season 1 had some amazing guests, including YouTube sensation Liza Koshy and NBA All-Star Kevin Love.
Nothing robs us of more human potential than mental illness.
This season will have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes, including the amazingly talented Anthony Ramos.
How do we dig deeper in what we say as artists if we aren't digging deeper in our own lives?
TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio.
This time last year, I was on the bus to field hockey games. I didn't even do TikTok.
And to give back, my guests will also talk about a charity that's close to their hearts.
Oh, Sammy doing all this important work in the world. I'm saying 17, man, come on.
Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, speaking of Tennessee, the Titans put on a dominant performance against the Colts in their 45-26 win.
Depending on the week you see them, they're scary. Like when they're good, they pushed the Colts around the field for 3.5 hours.
Well, we're showing a guy right there who usually takes a lot of responsibility for that. Derrick Henry, another huge day with 27 carries and 178 yards. Season high 3 touchdowns. It was his third straight game with over 100 rushing yards and 7th of the season. So they're now 8-3 and in first place in the AFC South.
Look how much bigger he looks than Darius Leonard.
Yes, he's spectacular. There's no really way to define Derrick Henry. The Colts dropped to 7-4. It really comes down to him. I've been saying this all year, but it just, if you just look at the numbers, it's what it is. In week 7 through 10, he averaged 19.5 carries and 89.5 yards. Had 2 touchdowns, and the Titans were 1-3. In the last 2 games, averaged 27.5 carries, 155.5 yards. Had 4 touchdowns, and the Titans are 2-0. He leads the league in rushing yards and has 127 yards lead over Dalvin Cook. He's second in rushing touchdowns with Dalvin Cook. But they go as he go. Obviously, you don't want to consistently have your running back having that many carries. It's absurd, but that's what their offensive identity is.
If they can, you know what? My takeaway is if you can give him week 17 off, like that, he's one of those guys. He recharges fast. He likes a lot of carries.
Yeah, and some running backs like a lot of carries. Yeah. Like it's a huge number.
Eric Dickerson always says that.
Yes. He loved having a lot of carries. You get into a rhythm, and you can be more consistent. That's just how some guys are. But he's incredible, and you're absolutely right. Week to week, it's hard to predict what the Titans are going to be unless Derrick Henry is getting the ball a lot. So tonight's game's a little interesting.
I think it's actually a great Monday Night Football game. Very interesting.
Expect to see a lot more of Jalen Hurts on the field when you see the Eagles hosting the Seahawks tonight. Carson Wentz will be the starter, but Hurts has reportedly been getting more first-team reps this week. and the Eagles are planning on using him a lot more tonight than in any game this season.
Well, most of these young quarterbacks are having success, so roll it out there. I mean, listen, you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Give him 12 snaps and see what it looks like.
I believe that's the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz has been sacked 40 times this season, the most of any quarterback. But he's 3-6-1, 58.3 completion percentage, 14 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 10 fumbles.
He's just not accurate enough. 58% is terrible in this league. This league is built now for 64%.
I'm with you. I don't know what the Eagles have to lose. This is a terrible season for the NFC East.
Right.
Carson Wentz is obviously struggling. Now, look, he's still starting, and they're just saying you're going to see more of Jalen Hurts. But why not? Mix it up. Try and get the win tonight, and get some momentum going. I don't know. We've got to try something.
Listen, Washington, Dallas, and the Giants are all playing better football. You could very easily end up in last place.
Yes.
So get it together. Win games.
I mean, somebody's gonna mess around and win this division, and someone's gonna be in last place. It's not gonna be surprising either way. Finally, I felt like this was the highlight of the weekend. I know this has been the talk of the internet since it happened, and I didn't know what to expect.
And we
talked about it actually quite a bit on the show leading up to it. Yes, I did watch this. Mike Tyson returned to the ring this weekend for an exhibition match against Roy Jones Jr. I did not know what to expect. I hadn't seen him. He looked like he was in great shape. He lost 100 pounds, which is remarkable. And both of them looked decent. I felt like Mike won. And I agree with you. It did look as if he was not really trying to take Roy's head off in the fight, but it exceeded my expectations for a 54-year-old 8-round fight.
Mike Tyson looks quicker, substantially quicker than George Foreman did.
He does still have a lot of speed.
Absolutely. He moves well. And by the way, I think he throws punches with a certain strength better than Foreman. I watched George Foreman come back. Tyson's better than Foreman, in my opinion. Now, Foreman had a great job. It was hard. Foreman was it was a mountain. And I don't know if Mike I think once you get 55, you don't want to get hit in the chops. But when I watched Mike's movement, I'm like, oh, he's fine. Mike's fine. You know, Joey, it's like the late Kobe Bryant. Final game, 60 points. Nobody thinks Tyson can fight 4 fights in a year like when he's 20. But if you're telling me you give Mike Tyson from today 4 months for 1 fight, he'll give you, Mike, you don't lose that. If you took Dan Marino today and just said, go throw 1 practice, he didn't lose his arm. Dan could still make all the throws. Dan lost his legs. He didn't want to do camp.
Yeah, you're not asking for a whole season.
No, you're asking for... Drew Bledsoe has said this. He goes, I can spin it. I can throw the ball. He goes, my legs, they just said, no more camp. No more preseason. I can't take the snaps.
I mean, I thought it was really entertaining. It was fun to participate in with everyone. Now, the fight before with Nate Robinson was a disaster. I literally screamed. So they hit the bell and Nate came running out and I screamed. Like just watching the difference between Mike and Roy and that fight with Jake Paul and Nate Robinson. I'm like, these are boxers. Do you see how they're not running around the ring, swinging like this? Like, they're boxing.
I'm like, Nate, this kid wants to be a boxer. He's had a fight. Nate was just like Nate was fighting what you do if you fought your brother.
Yes.
A family member.
This is boxing. Like Snoop said, you don't play with boxing. This is your boxing. It was so crazy to watch, but I enjoyed the whole entire evening, and
it was an event.
I thought it was really well done.
Good stuff, Joey, with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
3-word game, every NFL game succinctly described in 3 words. Next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
In the summer and autumn of 2020, the city of Portland, Oregon became the center of a vast media blitz. Thousands of viral videos showing marching federal agents and police officers, tear gas, black-clad anarchists and fires went viral all over the internet. What didn't go viral was the truth, because the story of Portland's Black Lives Matter movement and of the Portland protests of 2020 is so much stranger than I think the mainstream media would ever be willing to cover. I was there, and more importantly, the people that I talked to for my new show, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, were there. Through their experiences, you'll learn the truth, both about Portland and about what's coming for the rest of the United States. in the next few years. Listen to Uprising, a guide from Portland, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Life-changing sleep is all about what's underneath. Casper.com, code HERD. 1,500 perforations create a perfect cooling system. We call it the three-word game, Joy. You can succinctly, when forced, describe every NFL game in just 3 words. We do it every Monday at this time in Best for Last, and here we go.
Raiders at Falcons.
What was that? Biggest blowout loss since Gruden returned 2 years ago. 5 turnovers, 11 penalties. First game without a touchdown this year for the Raiders. Fell behind, a lot of 3rd and 8s. Just didn't look prepared. Bad on 3rd down, 3 of 12, 11 penalties. And Atlanta remains my Bermuda Triangle. I bet them they lose. I stay away, they win. Raiders meet Atlanta.
Dolphins at Jets.
Refuel this jet. Just fire everybody. Trade Darnold, fire Gase, what a mess. It was actually the first game this season that Sam Darnold had all of his receivers. They scored a field goal on their opening drive and did not score in the rest of the games. They had 3 points against the Dolphins this year in 2 games. 3 points.
Cardinals at Patriots.
Youth versus wisdom. 6 penalties by the Cardinals. They now lead the NFL in total penalties. Talented but young and mistake-prone. Kyler Murray, 67 passer rating. And the Patriots offense won despite a season low in yards, 180, and passing yards, 69.
Panthers at Vikings.
Buy Panthers stock. I really like this team. I know they lost, but they have 6 losses by 1 possession under Matt Rule. They are rebuilding the defense, and this kid Jeremy Chin, rookie safety, 2 fumble recoveries, returned for a touchdown on consecutive plays. Again, they drafted well. You don't have to win games to impress me. I love what I see with Carolina. Not surprised. That's why Teddy Bridgewater would work. Moves the chains, coachable, doesn't make big mistakes. Really should have won that game yesterday. They missed a 54-yarder to win it.
Browns at Jaguars.
Least impressive win. Baker Mayfield, 4 straight games with fewer than 20 completions. Listen, Cleveland's kind of figured out a way to do it. We're going to run it. We're not going to put Baker in a situation to throw on 3rd and long. In fact, off play action, if you take play action passes away from Baker Mayfield, he's just going to drop and throw. He's near the bottom of the NFL, but Kevin Stefanski, to his credit, has figured out what they do. They run it, they keep quiet, and they play as good a defense as their personnel allows.
Titans at Colts.
Remember the Titans. 8-3, first place. This is the team last year that shocked Baltimore. They've won 3 of their last 4. Derrick Henry leads the NFL in rushing. Ryan Tannehill, 8 straight games with a touchdown pass. So, you listen, they had a couple of stinkers. That game against the Bengals, pretend it didn't happen. But boy, Indianapolis is physical, and they just punched them right in the forehead.
Giants at Bengals.
Won 3 straight. And during that streak, the Giants are +7 in turnover differential. They've held the lead in the 4th quarter in 7 straight games. They have not lost a game by more than 1 possession since week 3. Again, they're well coached. They're not terribly explosive on offense. And let's keep our fingers crossed on Daniel Jones. He got hurt, and the second half was just get out of there, survival, ugly second half of the Giants.
Chargers at Bills.
This is Linsanity. Anthony Lynn's in trouble. Justin Herbert's too good to be 2-8. The play calling at the end of the game, they called a running play at the goal line with no timeouts and down by 2 scores in the final minute. Their 3 wins are against the 3 worst teams in the league: Jets, Jags, Bengals. Anthony Lynn's a nice guy. He's got some presence and alpha, but it's not working, and they just look really challenged in the second half of games.
49ers at Rams.
That looked awful. 4 total turnovers. Jared Goff's season low in completions, touchdown passes, passer rating was 52.9, and it should be noted, Sean McVay called him out. Sean McVay tends to be very pro player. So when Sean McVay's, he's had 6 picks and 5 fumbles in the last 4 weeks. So Goff right now is a turnover mess.
Saints at Broncos.
Broncos deserve that. Quarterback room got wiped out by COVID-19. I feel bad for players, but in the end, the NFL said, listen, we have protocols and rules. Follow them. They didn't, made an example of them.
Chiefs at Buccaneers.
Foot off gas. Listen, that thing was 17-0 at the end of the first quarter, and it had 48-8 written all over it or something. But, I will say this. Tampa Bay in the second half, I thought, did a pretty good job. A little bit of an offensive identity. They shortened some of the routes. Tom was throwing to Fournette, Ronald Jones. I did think in the second half, the offensive system was more geared toward what Tom does. Under 20-yard throws.
Bears at Packers.
Time to hibernate. Bears trailed 27-3 in the first half, coming off a bye. No direction, like Matt Nagy, but the offense doesn't know what they are. The defense doesn't have a personality. At this point in the season, I got to be able to watch you and know what you're striving to do. And with Chicago either side of the football, I can't. Speak for yourself is around the corner. For John and Joy, we'll see you tomorrow in Los Angeles.
Get ready to laugh and learn. I'm Nick Smith.
I am Flamin' Road. I am He He cash a check, she make the money, we spend it.
Laugh and Learn is a weekly podcast bringing you the latest headlines, keeping you politically informed, mixed in with a little pop culture. You never know what you're going to hear. Subscribe and listen to Laugh and Learn on the iHeartRadio app or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.